Welcome to the Real Estate Entrepreneurs Podcast. Real people doing real deals in real estate and no fake gurus allowed. We bring you the best and the most real estate investors in the space. They'll be showing you the good, the bad, and the ugly of real estate investing. Like, share, subscribe, get notified. It's the Real Estate Entrepreneurs Podcast.
Welcome to the Real Estate Entrepreneurs Podcast. And today we have a special guest. Well, every guest is special here, but this one, it's actually very special to me because I just met him a couple of weeks ago. I actually know his business partner prior to knowing David. And we were at a mastermind, man, and I could relate so much to what you had to say in your presentation. So, man, I'm honored to have you here, David. Thank you so much for taking on this short notice on the podcast. But let's get down to the nitty gritty, man. Who is David Oles?
I thought you were having somebody good speaking. That's why I was here. Well, man, no, seriously, thank you so much for having me. We had a great time down in San Antonio a couple weeks ago. It was really fantastic. So yeah, man, so I'm a wholesaler. I tell people I'm an old school knuckle dragon wholesaler. I've been doing real estate for almost 20 years. That's primarily our business now, our business model here in Chattanooga. You mentioned my partner Tag. We have a great partner, and we run Nationwide Property Liquidators, and we are wholesaling, well, nationwide. But it's kind of been a long journey for me to get here.
Yeah, you are a 20-year overnight success.
Overnight, man. just like that. Yeah, man. So kind of a little bit about me. I grew up in the Boston area, and I tell people my parents were super strict. Like when I was a kid, like every day when I came home, I had to do 1 hour worth of chores, and every Saturday and Sunday was 3 hours. So my dad was like an ex-military guy. He was in the Army, so had a very structured childhood. And he was the like fix the car guy, build the addition guy. We're gonna re-side the house this weekend. So I grew up doing all that stuff and absolutely hated it. Hated every single thing about yard work and raking and just all of it. And I lived in New England, so like we rake for a living up there. I mean, all it is leaves falling. And I used to say when I was a kid, boy, when I get older, I'm gonna have a condo, and I'm never gonna make my kids work in the yard, and I'm never doing any of this stuff. And so of course, what happens is you become your parents. And so I went to school, went to UMass. I went for a degree in criminal justice because I thought that was the right thing to do, and ended up working in retail. Kind of worked my way full time through college. And when my parents moved to Florida, so I moved down there, and I ended up working for a hardware store. So I kind of got involved with contractors and, dealing with that side of the world. Right. So when I got married in 2002, my wife, Heather, and we bought a house, and I couldn't figure out when I went to the closing why I was buying my house from Wells Fargo. I thought that was kind of strange. I didn't understand anything about foreclosures. So the realtor, sort of explained to me what happened. I thought, okay, that's great. So because I'd grown up fixing houses and doing these things, and I worked for this lumber yard and hardware store, we started fixing up our house. So it was in Apopka, Florida. It was a little 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And, we like took out the carpet. We put down laminate floors. This is an 2002. I took out like the sliding glass door, French doors, that kind of stuff, replaced the building, and we lived in it. And about 2 years later, we put it up for sale. And the realtor's like, hey, so you've lived here for 2 years. So that means whatever money you make is going to be tax-free. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. So I think we bought it for like 97 and we sold it for somewhere around 150. So we had 50 grand cash in our pocket.
Nice.
This is really cool. Like
we can do this again.
Yeah. So we wanted to move closer to where I was working. So we were looking around and we thought, well, we should do this again. Like, so let's find a house that needs to be fixed up. And surprisingly, my wife was on board with this plan, which most wives probably aren't. And so we went to DeBerry, Florida, and I found this beautiful subdivision of all these brick houses with like oak trees. I mean, it's picturesque, everything you want. And we bought the ugliest house kind of in this cul-de-sac. And I remember we negotiated back and forth and felt like we overpaid like 178. And like everything was super dated, 1970s house. So we moved in, kind of the same thing. Over the course of 2 years, we completely remodeled the inside. And a little over 2 years later, we sold it for almost $300,000.
Wow.
I said, wow, like this is really good. And I need to figure this out. There's a business here. There's something here.
How can you do this at a scale, right?
Well, and I wasn't even thinking scale at that point. This is a great part-time job. So I remember I was at the airport and I was waiting for someone to come in. I'm moseying through the bookstore because I like to read. And I picked up this red book on the shelf, and of course it's Rich Dad Poor Dad. And while I'm waiting, I was sort of thumbing through and started reading it, and it really struck me as something I needed to read. So I grabbed it, went home, just devoured it. And at the end of the book, it says, if you want to be in real estate, you should find a real estate investment group. So I'm okay, great. So this is 2003 or whatever, and so I'm on the internet and I'm Google searching it, and I came across this wholesaler's website. His name was Todd Hutchinson. We're still friends. And at the end of his website, he's like, go to Central Florida Real Estate Investors. And he gave us a link. So I'm like, okay, I'm like, this is what the book said to do. So I'm going to do what the book says. I'm really good at following instructions because I'm not that smart. And so I found when they were having this meeting. I don't know if you've ever heard of CFRI, the real estate group down there. It was like the third biggest in the country, really big. So I remember it was July of that year, and I was in DeBerry, so I drove down to Orlando, and it was at this old Bumby theater, this like old play theater or whatever. So I pull in the parking lot, and there's cars everywhere. Like We Buy Houses, the Inspectigator, hard money, soft money, like everything. Like every car is all lit up with signs. And dude, I drove through the parking lot. I was afraid to go inside. Couldn't do it.
Why?
I was afraid, man. I'm like, I don't belong here. Like,
you got intimidated, right? It
was 100% intimidated. Couldn't go in, scared. So I go home, and I'm not even sure I ever told my wife this. I'm like, I couldn't find it.
Oh wow.
I'll try another time. I got busy and just couldn't find it. So I do remember I went back in September of that year because it was my birthday. It was right around when my birthday was. So I this time I'm like, the whole time I'm like, I'm going in, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. So I paid my $20 and went in as a guest. And I will get into all of it, but I sat down in this theater and they had this thing called Deal of the Month. And there's this old guy who's probably like 80 years old, weighs 80 pounds, and like think overalls, like everything but the straw hanging out of his mouth. They get four or five.
We get those guys in every city, man.
So they would get 3, 4, 5 investors, whatever, to talk about a deal they did that month, and then they give them like a $50 Home Depot card. So this guy gets up there and he's like, I can't remember his name, but I'm like, hi, my name is Bob. And everybody's like, hey, Bob. He's like, I was driving to North Carolina to see some relatives, and I stopped on the side of the road, and this guy had a house for sale. And I offered him $40,000 and he wanted $80,000, and he wouldn't take my money. So I gave him my card and I just left. And when I was coming home, he called me and he said he'd sell me his house for $40,000. And so I went back and put it under contract, and I hired a contractor to fix it. And I flipped it for $120,000 and made $40,000. I sat there and I looked at this old guy who could barely string 2 sentences together. And I'm like, if this guy can do that,
I can.
I'm positive I can do this. 100% I can do this. And then there was this other girl that got up on stage, and a Russian girl, barely spoke English, and she's flipping mobile homes like flapjacks. And I said, if this girl can do it and can't speak English, holy shit, I can do this. Like, I'm positive I can do this. Like, I can definitely do this. So that was a real foundational thing that always goes through my head. You do not have to be smart to do this business. You don't have to be the smartest guy around. You have to pick something to be focused at it. And just be determined. I mean, that's the one thing I tell people all the time. And that's even in our business with Tag and I. we stay in our lane. We are wholesalers. That's what we do. We don't bounce around and do land development. And, we don't do all these different things. We do one thing and we do it really good.
Yeah.
So
you went there, you saw proof of concept from people
100%.
that you said, man, this is everyday people like me, I can relate to these people, right? Because in your case, you probably didn't know real estate that well, but you knew you spoke better English than the Russian girl.
I was not as cute, but I did speak better English.
Yeah. So, but your language was much better than hers, and here she is making money, right? Doing flips on mobile homes and things like that. And then you see this older man, he's barely, he can barely hold it together, and he's making $40K on a deal.
Yeah, not even in his town, like remotely.
Like talking about virtual wholesaling back then, right?
Yeah,
so
amazing.
Which seems to be a new concept, but it's been around forever, right?
It has.
So how did it go from there? Okay, so you went to the RIA, you said, okay, proof of concept, if they can do it, I can.
Yeah.
How do you move from there? Like, what was the next step for you?
So one great thing about the Central Florida Real Estate Investors, it's really big, it's well organized, it covers all of Central Florida. So someplace 4 nights a week in Central Florida, even to this day, there's some class going on. And that's all I did. I did everything I could to just immerse myself in real estate and learning as much about it as I could. So one night might be a wholesaling group, another night, maybe it's a landlord group or land development. I mean, there's something going on every night. There's a group in Osceola County and in Orange County. So there's always something going on. So I did as much as I could there. The RIA there put on a lot of, come Wednesday, it's a free teaser class. And then on Saturday, $59, you can come for the all-day seminar. So I just did as much of that as I could. I paid for some mentors. I got in some coaching. Took classes on how to buy properties subject to wholesaling. I paid a bunch of money to go to some wholesaling boot camps. And I remember I bought I bought a couple of courses. I've got probably $100,000 in courses here where I've invested. But I bought my first property subject to by sending a very simple letter. Remember, so this is the mid 2004, 5, 4 or 5. So foreclosures were maybe just starting to hit. But I sent a letter that basically said, let me do for you what your realtor can't. And then it had some stuff. So basically I was marketing to expired listings.
Okay.
So I bought this course from a guy named Chris Kirshner, he's not around anymore. I think he's gotten out of coaching and the real estate stuff, but he had this great course. If you can find it on eBay, I'd tell everybody to go buy it. But yeah, it had all these audios, like listen to this as you're pulling up to the guy's house, like kind of very, very well structured, great course. And I went in to talk to these people, and I made them these 3 offers, kind of like the presentation we did the other day. And they said yes. And I'll tell you, man, it was like an out-of-body experience. The first time somebody said yes to a contract, it was just unbelievable.
Yeah, you were probably expecting some sort of rejection or something like that, right?
Yeah, man. So the craziest thing is the way it worked, and to not get too deep into it, is you say, here's what you're asking for your house, here's what you owe. So maybe you've got $30,000 in equity, and then you just sort of go through, what do you need for plumbing updates, electrical updates, blah, 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 blah. So that stuff, because you're trying to figure out what their equity is, so you can give them their equity, and take the property. And so as we're going through this list, they're like, oh yeah, well the plumbing needs to be done. That's probably $2,000. And the landscaping, they were adding the numbers up, which of course is making their equity go smaller.
Right.
And like my heart's pounding. I'm standing at their kitchen counter. We're doing this, and it was a house that they had inherited, and they were taking over these mortgages. But anyways, I got all their information. I went to the car, and my hand's shaking, and I said, oh, I have to call my partner. Let me go make a quick call, and I'll come back and I'll get them some numbers together for you. And so I go out and I call my wife. I'm like, okay, I think this is going to happen. Kind of put the offer together, went in and presented them some offers. They chose one, and we bought the property subject to. And,
nice. How much money did they put on their pockets when you did that?
It's like $2,000. I've got the paperwork here someplace. It wasn't much.
So yeah, I'll give you $2K. I'll take over payments, and
out you go.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So that was probably our 3rd or 4th rehab at that time, and we rehabbed it, and we made 25 or 30,000, not as much as some of the others, but yeah, that was just another property in the journey. The other ones we had bought as owner occupants. and had loans in our own name, homeowner loans. In there, so at some point, I went and took like a boot camp to learn how to wholesale. And that was a tremendous failure. I spent a bunch of money to go to a week-long class and learned wholesaling. And, they talk about sending postcards and going out and putting out Bandit signs.
Right.
So, like I said, I'm really good at following instructions. So I got all my Bandit signs, put them in the little stands, and I went out, and on every corner, like no matter which way you were facing, I had a sign. So I had like 8 signs at every intersection, up and down 1792, going from DeLand to Orlando. And we got back to the house because we did it at like overnight on a Friday, got back Saturday morning and laying in bed and the phone starts ringing. And it was the police department.
Oh, yeah.
Son, you need to come pick up all these signs. I'm like, okay. So I learned sometimes you can overdo it. Sometimes you can definitely do a few too many.
I've been there before. I actually ran with Dennis, my old business partner in the wholesaling business. We everything we did, we always did it at a scale. And me and him went and bought like 2,000 signs. And we were literally dropping 100 signs a day.
A day,
broad daylight. Like we didn't care. Like it's stupidity on steroids, and we got all these signs in our truck, and here we are, and we will do like a contest. Who could put because we were using the stapler to put up on the posts. Yeah. So we were like, okay, who can do more within an hour? So 1 hour I will drive, the other hour he will drive, and man, we just literally flooded the county that we targeted with Bandit signs. And man, those police officers were not too happy about that.
Yeah, dude, 100 signs isn't a joke. People say that and they're like, oh, 100 signs. Like it's hard to do.
No, that's literally took us all day, like all day long. And we had to take turns, because we can only put maybe 5 to 10 an hour, sometimes 5 to 20. So it will take us a whole full-blown 8-hour day just posting this 100 signs. And 100 signs feel like 1,000 signs.
Oh, it never
by the time you're done, you're like, oh my God, what did we just do? And we kept a tally. And at the time we didn't have the app to like track them or whatever.
No.
Nowadays there's apps so you can track them. But they work. I mean, the Bandit signs work. It's just another way of marketing. They connect with a whole different psychology from people that are calling these signs. There's also a whole psychology behind these Bandit signs. Like in the hoods, you want them to be handwritten, like with a Sharpie. If you put the fancy ones, they don't ring. But so anyhow,
I would. That's what I. So I only did 100 for buying 100 that went out every Friday, and I would spend during the week. Handwriting them. I use these paint markers, and I'd have them all over my house, or when we had an office where we were putting them out. But so I got a call. Come pick up your signs, nitwit, and so I had to go out. And there's nothing worse than going out and picking up your own signs, dude.
Yes.
I had to do it twice in my life. Once was for that, and the other one was court ordered because I got in some trouble here in Chattanooga. But that's the most degrading, embarrassing thing is to have to go pick up your own signs. So anyways, so we did that. And just wholesaling just really didn't work. I don't know what was missing at the time, but I just couldn't get it to stick. So we sold that house we bought subject to. I bought another one that was out of probate. And this was the last house I bought in Florida. It was in Deltona, Florida, which if you know that area, like every house is the same. Everything was built within 20 years. So they're all these ranch style houses. And I bought this house, $99,000, like an identical house, like 1 block over, 2 blocks down, it just sold for like $225. So I'm like, this is a layup, right? I'm going to live in this. I got a mortgage in my own name. I'm going to remodel it, and then I'll sell it. So I bought it in like August and remodeled it. My wife and I did it. My brother, Thomas Morgan, who's an investor here as well, he was helping me at the time, my dad. So we fixed it up, and I finished it like just before Thanksgiving. So I called my realtor, and she's like, yeah, I'll come look at it in January because you don't want to put anything on the market now. I'm like, okay, great. So she shows up like January 3rd, and she says, you did a great job. I'm like, I know. It's like, it looks really good. I'm like, I know. I was so happy. And I said, what do you think I can get for it? She's like, well, looking from what we've got here, probably 159, maybe 157, like 229, like 6 months ago. Oh, well, there's all these foreclosures and bank-owned properties. And
what year is this?
08.
So, oh yeah.
Yeah. So I did
in the middle of the foreclosure pandemic, you know.
So it kind of snuck up on me, but because I'm a nitwit, I'm like, oh, but my house is better. I'm like, oh, my house is better though. I'm remodeled and they're not. She's like, well, I don't recommend going any higher than like 155, 157. I'm like, nope, my house is better, 169. She's like, okay. So we went about 6 weeks, not one showing.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh, shoot. So let's drop it down to 159. And now all that's happening is, in hindsight, we can see this. The market's just falling like a rock. Like maybe one or two showings, down to 145, a couple could not get traction on this house at all. And in the meantime, we knew we were going to move out of Central Florida. We were just going to try to move someplace that was a little bit better, mainly for real estate. And didn't ever sell the house. I ended up doing a lease option for $5,000 down, just to kind of cover our mortgage. So,
right.
So we get this $5,000 down. We had searched all over and we decided we were going to go to Chattanooga, Tennessee. One thing about Florida, again, the market, and you could see it. The market was just in a free fall there.
I remember I was there in 2008. Actually, I was there in between 2007 and 2008. I was not in real estate at the time.
Yeah.
I was kind of like taking a sabbatical from my oil and gas job. And but I was living in Miami, and I had actually just started a business in the gray water industry. So we were becoming distributors for the gray water industry, basically for valves and gauges and things like that.
Right.
And when I started seeing all these foreclosures happening, and I was like, man, this is not a good time for me to be in business right now. And I literally shut the business down. I didn't even get started. I set everything up. Luckily, I never got a warehouse. Yeah. But I shut everything down and I started looking for a job again in the oil and gas business. Right. And that's how I got back to Houston. So, and that's when I started in real estate, is when I was in Houston with a job. So, so it was just all falling apart.
So at the time when all this was going on, I had a real job. I was an outside salesman for ProBuild. ProBuild 84 Lumber. Everybody has those.
Right.
And we sold to these big track builders, Pulte Homes and DR Horton. And one thing, so when you're a vendor for these companies, they have like a model floor plan. So the Everest model, I don't know, whatever. So there are standards: 5 1/4 baseboard, 3 1/4 inch casing, crown molding. For us, because I sold a lot of millwork and trim, certain types of doors, maybe a fiberglass door. And what we were noticing is they were changing the standards. They were going from thick baseboard to small baseboard, wide casing to smaller stuff, taking out the crown. My wife was a purchasing agent for Ashton Woods Homes, and they were doing the same thing. Granite was their standard. Well, now they're going back to laminate. So we were seeing this pullback, and we knew sales were slowing down. So you could see like something coming, but nobody had any idea it was just going to drop, just drop like a rock. So, so I say all that because we knew we were going to get out of there and try to go someplace else. It's a long story, but basically we picked Chattanooga. It was an emerging market, and the sales the values hadn't dropped quite as much as they did. So
Florida is just a big bubble, right? And right now, you can tell right now it's a big bubble, and I can already see prices dropping in the next year or so with all the forbearances and everything that's going on with because of COVID. I don't think it will be like it was at one point in the country, because banks are getting smarter on how to handle, work out a deal with the homeowners pretty much.
Yeah, man. I tell you, I don't think the banks are going to take as many properties back. I think the same guy who is at Wells Fargo today was there 10 years ago. And it's better for Wells Fargo or Bank of America to take that money and put it to the end than to have the bad toxic debt sitting on it.
Work with the guy, because if the homeowner leaves the property vacant, now it's going to get ransacked by thieves and by thugs and by people that just want to, squat, which is literally what happened in 2008. I actually have a friend that used to live not far from Orlando, at Winter something. I forgot the name of it. Was that
Winter Springs?
No, it's something else. It's southwest of Orlando.
Winter Haven.
Winter Haven. He had a beautiful house there in Winter Haven, and I think he paid for the house like $300,000 mortgage in place, the whole 9 yards. He lost his job at the time, but the values had dropped so drastically that now his house was worth like 150, so half of what it used to be worth. He walked away from the property. He literally told the bank, take it, I don't want it anymore. He walked away from the property for 3 years. He actually moved out of the country. He got a job somewhere else. He came back to the US 3 years later, and the bank called him and I said, look, we're gonna work out a deal with you. Can you get back in your house? And he was like, what? It's like, yeah, your house is intact, is the way you left it. We're gonna modify your mortgage. Your new payment is based on $150,000, and this is what it's gonna be. And he left the house vacant for 3 years, owing the bank like $300,000. He went back into the same house. He still lives there, by the way. He probably hasn't paid for and he just got a slam dunk deal because the bank went and slashed half of the debt. So I think that a lot of those things will happen to where the bank will work with the homeowner to put the payments on the back end or spread them out throughout the life of the loan or whatnot, because they don't want to have houses vacant. So anyhow, so you picked Chattanooga, Tennessee.
We picked Chattanooga. We actually bought, this is a funny story. I remember we were at one of the real estate big meetings, and I was sitting there with my brother, and he was on this old like phone, I don't know, Verizon or whatever phone, and he's on Craigslist, and he found this duplex that was for sale here in Chattanooga, and we're in Orlando, and he's just texting back and forth with these people, and he set up a deal to buy this duplex subject to in Chattanooga without us even being here. So we sent them all the paperwork. We got the contract signed, never had seen it. They sent us a couple pictures. And so we're like, well, I guess we got to drive to Chattanooga. Like, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. So we drove up here. It's 577 miles. We looked at the duplex. It was okay. You know, it was kind of like a HUD house, but as a duplex. So it was 10 years old. And we bought that one subject to. That one we actually had to put like 10 grand down, which I would never do again. But I was new and didn't know any better. And I got a partner. He put 5 down. We put 5 down. And we bought that property. While we were up here, we did some driving for dollars and did door knocking. And we found another property. And we ended up making the same thing. A guy who had gotten married, house was vacant. And we made a deal to buy that one subject to. So now we had a place to move to and a place to rent. And
so at this time now, you're a full-time real estate investor, right?
I still have my sales job I moved to 84 Lumber. So kind of a cool thing that happened, we knew we were leaving. A couple of salesmen where I was at Pro Build had gone over to 84 Lumber, because salesmen like that, they bounce around all the time.
Right.
And my buddy who had gone over there said, hey, the manager wants to talk to you. I'm like, about what? He wants to give you a job. I'm like, dude, I'm leaving. Like, I'm out in 4 to 6 weeks. That's okay. So I went over and met with him, and he's like, dude, I'm going to put you on a guarantee of $80,000 for 6 months. I'm like, dude, I'm out in like 6 weeks. He's like, I'll transfer you to Chattanooga. All I want is your accounts. So I spent the next 4 weeks I went to work for 84. I transitioned all my Orlando accounts over to one of their guys, and they sent me to Chattanooga, and I had a 5-month guarantee. So I had a little guaranteed money to kind of come up here and get my real estate business going. And because it's an outside sales job, my day was I would go to it's terrible. I went to the office at like 7 a.m. for 2 hours, and then I went out driving for dollars.
Driving around all day long.
I went back to the office at 4 o'clock and said, boy, it's a killer out there, guys. It's tough. So they were awesome. I still try to buy everything I can from 84. Those guys were awesome. But so we came to Chattanooga. We knew literally one person. I knew a realtor.
Wow.
That I had messaged back and forth with, and we met one time when we came up here, but didn't know anybody. But we came up and we said, okay, we've got these 2 properties, and we started doing the Bandit signs. So my wife, my brother, and me, we did the thing. Every Friday night, we went out and did 100 signs, no matter what. Like, didn't matter if it was snowing, a movie came out, my kids had a school play. Like, when that was done, we went out and we did our 100 signs. So Chattanooga's not big. It's not like where you're at. We only 250,000 people. So even just doing once a week, like every so often, it's been 10 years, I still see our signs out there every so often.
Wow.
So we put out a lot of signs. And then during the week, we're driving for dollars. We're doing old school stuff. Like, it's not like now where everybody's on this texting nonsense.
Texting, calling,
Yeah, no, this is
Facebook.
We were driving around. It was the summer. I had my kids in the back of a Jeep. I'm like, they would jump out and they'd run up and tape a little flyer to the door. We buy houses. we're making lists. We come home. My wife is sending out yellow letters and postcards, and we're doing all that kind of stuff. And at night, back in the day, it was webinars. Remember, webinars were on at night. I'm watching Preston Ely and Tim Mai and all these guys. So we're trying to get a little education at night. During the day, we're just hustling. We just bootstrapped it. We just did it the old school way. And Bandit Signs got our phones ringing, and that's kind of how we started. And we did 30 or 40 deals in our first year, and then it's kind of growing progressively every year from there.
That's awesome, man. So when did you move full time? Like, what year was that when you moved full time from?
Yeah, we came here in June of 2009, June like 9th of 2009. And I tell people that house that we bought we took subject to move into, it was this older house, and I wasn't super picky because I just knew we were moving. But I left this beautiful house that I remodeled in Orlando that looked really good. And so I packed my wife, my 2 boys, my brothers with me. We all come up here. And to be real, we drive all the way up here. I put the U-Haul in. It's like this 1900s house. And we get some mattresses in there the first night, dude. And the power, half of it doesn't work.
Oh, wow.
So we're in this house. It's this old house. It needed to be remodeled. There's some mice running around. Dude, I cried myself to sleep that first night. I'm like, What have I done? I just left this beautiful house in Central Florida, ranch, beautiful, 100% remodeled. And I moved up here, and this house it's a dump. What was I thinking? What have I done? What have I done to my family?
Now, what was the main reason for leaving Florida? Was it looking for a better market for real estate, or?
100%, yeah.
Okay. So, I always believe that the universe has a strange way of taking you on the right direction, right?
It does, sure.
And look at what you did. You left a beautiful home and that's not an easy transition, especially for your family, right?
No, it was a leap of faith. And amazingly, my wife has always been on board for my nonsense. She's all 100%, and not everybody can work with their spouse. My wife works on the other side, across from the other wall. But she's always been on the plan of real estate. So super lucky to have that.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you're blessed by
I am, that. But a truly oh my God moment of what have I done? Is this going to work? Can we make this work? And luckily it did, just because we were too stupid to quit, and we worked hard, and we were focused on what we were doing.
You were going to make it work regardless. So in 2009 is when you shift from corporate to full-time real estate investor.
Yeah. I mean, I was really full-time investor from the time we got here. I just was.
Yeah. You just had a paycheck,
I had a paycheck for a couple months. Hey. And then they were lucky enough. They felt bad about laying me off. So I collected unemployment for a while.
I was the same way. I started in 2008. Now I had no prior real estate experience like you did. And literally I just bought I bought a few houses before, but it was just the place where I was. It wasn't like to make money or anything like that. Yeah. And I don't think I even made any money in those properties at all. By the time I offloaded them. So it was like paying rent, to be honest with you. But in 2008, when I'm in the oil and gas business, I'm making money now. Yeah. I was like, man, how can I put my money to work? And this whole bloodbath of, that's my camera. My camera loves to reset every 30 minutes. So it's when the foreclosure started happening, and I said, well, I guess everybody's getting out. I read a book somewhere where when there's bloodbath on the streets, that's when you really want to go and capitalize on it. And that's when I got in, right? But I was actually a full-time employee, W-2 guy, all the way until 2015.
Really?
So I did all my rentals and my rehabs in between 2008 to 2015. I was very much like you. I was full-time in real estate, but I had a full-time job, that allowed me to build that real estate, business that I had on the side. And when I got laid off in 2015, I said, man, I'm just going to go do real estate full-time. I don't know how I can replace my income, because I was a top income earner in the business I was making like $250,000 to $300,000 a year. And I live like somebody that made that kind of money. So that was the problem. Like, how can I replace my income? How can I start making $20,000 a month So I don't lose my house, my vehicles. I had like 5 cars, like one for me, one for my wife, one for my daughter, my mother-in-law, my everybody. Like literally, I was like a rapper. I was taking care of everybody around me, right?
Entourage. Yeah.
I had an entourage, so I had to literally figure out how to make that quick, and that's how I went to scaling a flipping business.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And then my flipping business is scaled to like all kinds of crazy houses that we were doing in 2017. And that's when Harvey happened. And that's how I had to fall backwards into wholesaling. So
that's an unbelievable story, dude.
It's crazy, man. And I'm still dealing with a lot of that stuff. But the reality is that is the universe takes you through a path for a reason. And you got pulled into Chattanooga, Tennessee, because you were looking for a change also, right? Like,
oh, for sure.
And I listen a lot to Tony Robbins, and he's got a saying that I love repeating, which is motion creates emotion. So what you were looking for was emotion, actually. That's why you had to move all the way from Florida to Tennessee to work on your business better.
And even in the retail world, before I got into building materials, I always knew something. Like I always knew there was something out there, and either I'd be like the president of the company, or just I always knew there was more, and I just didn't know exactly what it would be. But I in the back of my mind, I always knew that there was something,
Yeah. So let's talk about today, right? What does your operation look like today? Because it's impressive what you guys have built and how you guys are operating. And I know what you guys are doing, but the people listening or watching this podcast, they really don't know. So what does your business look like today?
So we're virtual wholesalers at the end of the day. I've got a couple other companies that have rentals and things, but this company, Nationwide Property Liquidators, NPL, 3 partners, myself, Tag Thompson, behind that wall, and my other partner, Heather.
Other wife.
My other wife. One wife, just one wife. One's enough, man. Holy smokes.
I was going to ask you, how do you do it, man? Like, that's very expensive,
She puts up with a lot of my nonsense, but so I have 2 great partners. So I'll say that without them, there wouldn't be any NPL. So Tag's been with us for about 3 years, and when he came on board, we were just wholesaling in Chattanooga, and he had transitioned from some companies that he owned, and he had sold, and he'll tell you all his story next time you guys talk. But so he's like, I want to come do real estate. It looks great. I'm like, oh, it's awesome. Yeah. But there's no way I could add another partner into the mix. We just couldn't do enough deals in Chattanooga,
to support. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm, make it $250. If I bring a guy in, I'm only going to make, less.
Your stuff in half. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said, well, like we can go virtual. We can go into other markets. I really don't like that model. I don't think it's a good model. But if you want to come in and like help do that, help implement that, then we can, we can try it. One thing about Tag, super smart, great computer guy, technology, all of those things that I can't do, he's fantastic at. Like I can't get my printer to work most days.
Right.
There are days I want to throw it out the windows.
Yeah.
So I can't, like, none of that stuff works for me. But he was able to come in and even from being outside of real estate, bring in that systems knowledge of how to set that up and effectively help us scale, because that's the way his brain works. So together we've been able to build a pretty good company. He came in and we kept Chattanooga as our core, and we ventured out and started adding cities, and have grown slowly but surely. We've made some tragic blunders and gone into some places where we spent a lot of money and did almost no deals. And we've gone
or you got contracts but you couldn't move them, or they fell through the cracks.
So here in Chattanooga, I really specialized in the under $25,000 houses. I mean, sold a ton of houses, call it the hood or the low income, whatever you want. And it was a different time in the market too. So we went to St. Louis. We picked St. Louis for some reason, and Tag was getting contracts like every day. Like, I got this house for $4,000. I'm like, absolutely, we could sell that. And we couldn't sell it. We couldn't move these houses, and we couldn't figure out why. So we actually drove up to St. Louis, and we realized why you couldn't sell. Anybody that's familiar, there's like some bad areas in St. Louis where they're just giving away properties and no investors.
Yeah, you should get them for free, basically.
Yeah, man, it was bad. It was just bad. So we left there. We tried Birmingham. We said, well, and Birmingham was a place I looked at before we came to Chattanooga. So I'm like, okay, it's close, because after you make one drive to St. Louis, you're like, if we're going to do this again and I have to drive, I at least want to be able to come home at night. So again, Birmingham, we got a lot of deals and we were actually able to sell them. But at that point, we were on the JV model, which if you're going to expand, that's kind of the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
And we could sell deals, but we were selling them for $3,000 to $5,000. So by the time you whack that in half, we weren't making any money.
It's not enough money for the effort.
It's not. So like we learned how to do virtual wholesaling wrong, just by trial and error. So we figured out all the things not to do. And just over time, we just continually get better and better at it and learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, but that's what sets you apart, David, because I'm the same way. I go to markets that I don't know about. Yeah. I start marketing, I start getting contracts, and then I find out, oh, I can't do nothing with this. Yeah. Like I'll give you, so true story. I met Tag in Birmingham at the REI coaches event with Brian Tripp, right?
Yeah.
And once he was like sitting across where I was in the mastermind day before the event itself. Mm-hmm. And he introduces himself, and I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And man, I just literally had something under contract in Chattanooga, Tennessee that I couldn't move. And I went to him right away. I was like, bro, I got something. If you're willing to dispose this thing for me, man, we'll split it, JV, no big deal. And I want to target more. And he said, what do you have? So I said, I got this house that looks like it's a duplex. Mm-hmm. And he's like, has it been vacant? And I said, yeah, the thing is vacant. And how long? I was like, I don't know, probably a couple of years. And he said, like, dude, it's worthless. That thing is not worth anything because you have to convert it. And the city's not giving permission to people to do it. So you literally don't have a deal. And I was like, wow, you just don't know what you don't know about a market, right? We'll never figure it out that was the problem with a particular property because the city wouldn't allow people to convert it.
Yeah, it's a weird thing here, but yeah, it's a thing for sure.
But that's how we learn, man. We go and explore different markets. We start targeting people. We put stuff on their contract. And then next thing you know, we're not being able to move it because we just don't know enough about that market, right?
Yeah. I mean, I tell them we're too stupid to quit. Like, I know we need to go to a new market. So we're going to figure out a new market and we're going to go there and we're going to spend some money. And if it hits, great. We're going to be all in. If it doesn't, okay. Well, we're going to learn from it and we're going to move on to the next city. And now we've been doing this long enough that we've got a great criteria. I mean, we're dialed in so that, like, I don't pick cities anymore, neither does Tag. We have our leads manager and our dispositions manager. They get together every week and they go, okay, we're going to target 3 new cities next week. And they'll run it by us. I'm like, yeah, those look great. Or, you know, don't go to Denver. It's a little too kooky for wholesaler. You know, let's pick something else.
Or too expensive. Like the price point is too high.
Not enough inventory to get. There's no vacant houses. It's just not a place for us. So we went to like St. Augustine, Florida, or something like that.
Oh, I love that place. I target all of that area there, all the way from.
Take it easy. Yeah, we're doing a little texting down there.
Man, that market is big enough for everybody. There is enough meat on the bone, and we do something you guys don't do, which and I'm not going to disclose here what you guys did marketing wise, but we actually target owner occupied properties, which is. It's hard because now your pool of properties is just much wider, right? So our cost per acquisition is going to be a little higher because we have to target more people to get a deal, basically, based on the criteria that we handle. But the pie is big enough for everybody. And the truth is that it's only the people that operate like you and us do, which we're willing to put money in marketing, test new markets, go make mistakes. We're the ones that stay in business. The ones that don't stay in business, that they can't figure it out, is the ones that are afraid of putting money in marketing. They're afraid of testing new things. They're afraid of taking the next step. And that's unfortunately 99% of the people that come into the wholesaling space.
It's true. You know, right out of 100 people that start wholesaling, like 95 aren't going to make it. And then of the 100 that make it, who's going to scale? 1%? It's hard, man. It's
less than one. I think it's less than one.
It's really hard. I tell people you're going to make less money for probably a year or two. Just work your own market. There's so much money to be made. Work your home market. It's easier. Virtual's tough. It's not. I know people sell the dream that that's so easy, but you can have higher fallout rate. It's just it's got its own set of challenges.
And not only that, you got to train people. You got to, you got to grow a team. And once you start going virtual, then you have to have a team. You have to have at least some VAs and maybe an acquisitions and these positions, or you have to be networking with people locally in the area in order to dispose the properties. In this space, like there's 375 million people, I think, in the US. And we pretty much know who we all are within certain markets, like because we're going to masterminds together. We're networking, learning from each other. I don't even consider any of the wholesalers out there that are within our space that are talking to each other competition, because we actually find ways to collaborate. Hey, man, like you're in Chattanooga. Okay, I know I can count on somebody to go maybe take some pictures or send a property for this poll, right? So the space is small enough to where because it's less than 1% that makes it. We now create this network, and now we're able to help each other out, and that's why we succeed. But we're not afraid of putting money in marketing and systems. So anyhow, I want to invite everybody to go ahead and find Mr. David Olds, probably on social media, Facebook. Probably is the easiest way to hit him up.
Instagram's pretty easy. I think all of my stuff is David_Olds_REI. I've tried to get it all the same.
David is pretty old school type guy. He shoots straight from the hips. He's a straight shooter. So hit him up, follow him. He's got a wealth of knowledge. I mean, he talked about, in the last mastermind we worked together about doing owner finance offers and how to do creative financing, and which is something we couldn't touch on this time, but man, thank you so much, David. By the way, David will be in our mastermind in Houston, Texas, April 30th, May 1st and 2nd, the Real Estate Entrepreneurs Mastermind. He will be participating on it. So if you want to come shake his hand and get to know him better, we'll be waiting for you there. But other than that, David, thank you so much for being here today, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was an honor to be on your podcast. I don't do a lot of these. I think the last one I did was probably 10 years ago. So
wow. Well, it's maybe it's a new start for you to get out there again and start educating people with your wisdom, right? Because guys like you are the ones that been down the route of many people that are getting in this business, right? Learning how to wholesale, learning how to do owner financing, learning how to establish an operation, maybe transitioning from a full-time job to a real estate job. So feel free to look him up, and until the next one, guys, you guys have a great day. Bye.
Thanks so much.